This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
We got a lot of ground to cover in this episode of the show. We're grateful to have you with us, Jespersen and Hicks. In just a moment, Supriya Dwivedi. She kicks off every week with us, and we'll take a look at the top stories making news not just through the weekend, but of course heading into this news week. Our parliamentarians, our MPs are back at it in Ottawa with the pedal to the metal. This is the first time really that Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre have squared off outside of the campaign trail. And there's, of course, business at hand. Probably Mark Carney's biggest mission right now, isn't it? The biggest promise that he's got to deliver on is these trade deals and getting Canada well positioned for global trade, not just trade with the United States, but there are some stories factoring into that. We'll get into it with Supriya. On the back nine of this episode, we'll continue our conversations one-on-one with all of the major contenders for the mayor's office in Alberta's two biggest cities. Sonya Sharp, Calgary councillor, wants the top job down at Calgary City Hall, and she'll be joining us after we check in with Supriya. All of that coming up, plus positive reflections presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. But in our feature interview, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, we welcome back a national commentator, a longtime political strategist, a former senior advisor to the Prime Minister of Canada, Supriya Dwivedi. The show's very good friend. And Supriya, before we get to the most important business, it has been confirmed to commemorate and celebrate a pretty significant occasion for our American neighbors. The White House will, on the South Lawn, welcome UFC. The renderings have been released on Instagram. You knew I had to lead with this. I'll be honest, I kept it in my back pocket on purpose. I wanted your actual reaction on camera. But look at these renderings released by the White House, released by UFC President Dana White. They are going all out to celebrate 250 years of the United States. Your thoughts?
How far that country has fallen. I don't look, I understand there are very passionate people about the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I don't know if that's the sort of thing that should be hosted on the grounds of the White House. But if we're talking about all of the weird, grifty kind of things that this current White House is doing, I guess it registers kind of lower than having the Qataris gift you a plane, right? So seems like it's par for the course for this administration, but I don't know, it's sad. That to me looks really sad. That looks dystopian, what you're putting up on the screen right now.
When I woke up this morning and I did exactly what I think psychologists and mental health experts tell us not to do, is go immediately to my social media apps and start scrolling. This rendering of the South Lawn UFC Octagon was all I was seeing. Check this out. This goes further. They're talking about how they're going to have this light dome that's going to basically amplify everything for all the world to see. They say just 5,000 seats there for security purposes. It'll all be done by lottery. And they say that they'll have, potentially up to 100,000 people in seating nearby. Obviously, it'll be streamed around the world. All I could think about was the shit that Zelensky got for not wearing a suit. That was like the number one thing I could think of as they're going to welcome some of the world's toughest fighters onto the South Lawn.
Is there like a roof though? What happens if it rains? The whole thing's off.
I just don't think that the Lord and Savior of the United States, that is the Lord Jesus Christ, would allow it in such a God-fearing nation, would allow any rain on such a big day. So they say it could be July 2026. That's what they're, that's sort of what they're hinting at, aiming to celebrate the 250th anniversary of American independence, maybe July 4th.
And can
why
people
wouldn't it be?
Bid for tickets for the lottery if they're non-American citizens?
I would suggest that would be a trap. I'm thinking back to one of my favorite, one of the most memorable Star Wars scenes of all time. It's a trap.
A trap.
Yeah. I wouldn't show up if I didn't have my American passport born and raised. I just think that, I don't mean to sort of poke fun at what's happening around there. Obviously a very serious situation, but it actually is kind of blowing my mind. I mean, the construction of the big ballroom, this is the thing that Trump says Americans have wanted for 150 years, but this UFC event, I mean, that just takes it to a whole new level. You advised the Prime Minister of Canada for a long time. You're well aware of sort of how these things go and the magnitude of these like state visits and people meeting in the Rose Garden and the sanctity of the Oval Office and how these spaces are revered. And to me, while it does certainly allow for a spectacle, which Americans, and in particular Donald Trump, has always had a great appreciation for, to me, it just kind of cheapens the whole thing. I'm actually, at first, I don't know why I thought it was a joke. I should have been well conditioned enough over the past 9 or so years to recognize it wasn't, but alas, it looks as though it will go ahead.
But this is the exact kind of thing that you would see on your news feed and have to question whether or not it's real because of the absurdity of the times that we're living in, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you see all those when those pictures came out of I guess it's the South Lawn, I'm not sure where the Rose Garden is. They like paved it over and now it basically looks like, a warehouse outlet mall food court with those, umbrellas that are sort of put in there. It looks like a fancy Panera Bread. Like it's weird. All of this is weird. But again, like it's a sign of the times. We're in weird times.
Yeah. Hey, let's get to some of the top stories, at least over the past few days. Canada recognizing the State of Palestine, and not alone in doing so, but the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, offering to help to build a peaceful future of Israel, says that the prospect of a two-state solution has, quote, gravely eroded due to actions by both Hamas and Israel. That from the PMO. Was this always going to be the case?
I think so, to a degree. I think, once you had France kind of come out and state their intention, and then there's obviously strength in numbers here. It's not, I don't think, an accident that Australia, Canada, and the UK kind of came out at once to recognize Palestinian state. It, seems to be coordinated. I think the coordination makes sense given the fact that not only does it put some pressure on the current Israeli government, but, speaking at that strength in numbers, it's better for the three of them to go at it together and to face the ire of the U.S. than for each of them to go at it, single-handedly. And we've heard from the Israeli Prime Minister, as well as from, a lot of his cabinet, that there basically will be no Palestinian state. We know that France plans to recognize a Palestinian state this week at the UN General Assembly in New York, because there's a lot of concern that right now we're not moving towards any sort of progress. But I should probably preface all of this by saying that if the U.S. isn't on board with this, then, the whole thing can basically be, effectively vetoed. And then we're back sort of to square one.
This is a kind of a scenario, though, and not that it's uncommon in politics, though, where nobody's going to be truly happy, right?
Yeah, totally. Look, I think you've already seen quite a bit of criticism from the pro-Palestinian contingent. I'm talking about Canadians here that are, opining on the decision, as well as we've obviously seen a very strong concerted opposition from the pro-Israel side, including basically the entirety of the Conservative Party right now speaking out very forcefully against this decision. But I think we all need to grapple with the current situation, which is that the Israeli government has, they've made this situation completely untenable. So I don't know what we expected, Canada, the UK, and Australia, France, some of these other countries, what we expected them to do. And for all of the hyperbole I've seen online about like, wow, the Prime Minister decided this, Canada doesn't recognize this. It's like, okay, guys, like foreign policy is a crown prerogative of the PM and the cabinet. So for all of the Canada doesn't recognize this, Carney does type whining, you're just really exposing how ignorant you are of the way our system works.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So in our live chat, powered by Park Power, Cliff says, it's wild that the Prime Minister decided to do this without Palestine accomplishing any of the so-called requests that Canada had laid forth for it to gain that recognition. Vamp Fashion says Carney's conditions were all the hostages had to be released, Hamas had to have no role in government, and Hamas needed to be disarmed. None of those have happened, and now the Prime Minister is just basically announcing this for a photo op. Erica says, not that I want to be cynical, but I can't be the only one that's wondering, what if, upon being granted statehood, Palestine immediately declares war on Israel. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Food for thought?
Yeah, sure. I think those are all, perfectly fine comments to make. I would say that with respect to this looking like a photo op, I mean, I don't think it's a photo op. I don't think all of these countries want to disturb the beast right now that is the U.S. on these issues, particularly when you don't necessarily need to be going forward with this sort of, with a fight that you don't necessarily need to pick. But I think this is about what's right and wrong. And I think for the countries that are moving this way, like I said earlier, there is strength in numbers. So if they can project this sort of international growing consensus for a Palestinian state with basically just the U.S. and Israel being offside, it kind of shows that the scales have sort of been tipped towards this arc of recognizing a Palestinian state.
Just a thought on the relationship, on Canada's relationship with Israel. Everybody talks about the United States' relationship with Israel and how it's like an incredibly important one, and how America, regardless of presidents, Republicans or Democrats, have typically had Israel's back unconditionally. When it comes to Canada's relationship with Israel, how do you think that this changes it, or what's an angle that you're kind of keeping an eye on?
I mean, I think it's interesting because I think increasingly I would say that, we can't necessarily consider this current iteration of the Israeli government to be a full capital A ally when it comes to what we would, believe as Canadians and what we would adhere to. I think that doesn't necessarily negate, years and years and decades of history. But right now, we have no sign or no signal from the current Israeli government that they're willing to, pause anything really. And what we're seeing from international groups that are on the ground, what we're hearing from journalists that are on the ground, not international journalists, mind you, because they're barred from reporting for the most part. These images and these, what folks are being bombarded with is absolutely horrific. You have conditions of mass starvation that are taking place. I know that the Israeli government would say that is, not their fault. It is the fault of Hamas. And, that's a perfectly fine argument to make, I suppose. But when you have video of IDF soldiers that are picking off folks that are, in line to get aid or to get food, that argument kind of falls flat on its face.
I want to ask you about a story that I guess it broke mid last week. Folks that checked out our most recent episode, we talked to Shannon Phillips, former NDP cabinet minister in Alberta, Ben Woodfin, and Pierre Poilievre's former director of comms, about a leaked government memo where Alberta's premier had basically put everybody involved on notice to prepare to use the notwithstanding clause relating to three different transgender laws in Alberta. The premier has commented on it over the past couple of days, over the weekend, essentially saying that she figures that this could take years and years and years to sort itself out, and the government needs to act now to protect kids. Certainly not the first time that a province or a premier has talked about or hinted about or actually invoked the notwithstanding clause. Your thoughts on the strategy of it? What do you see? How do you see it from Ontario?
So let's fast forward a little bit, or rewind, if that's okay. So what's up at the Supreme Court is going to be them reviewing this Bill 21, which is coming out of Quebec, which basically enforces state secularism throughout Quebec, so that anybody who has a job that is, supplied by the state. So if you're a teacher, healthcare worker, judge, etc., you can't wear any ostentatious religious symbols to show that you are of a certain faith, right? And so this has been going on in the background for a number of years. We've had, at least 3 elections since that law in Quebec has been passed. And you have the feds now that are seeking to intervene at the level of the Supreme Court. So they've basically asked the court to do 3 things at the Supreme Court level. The first is to clarify that Section 33 only applies to Sections 2 and 7 to 15 of the Charter, which is basically basically asking the court to confirm the limited nature of the scope of Section 33, right? Which is that override clause, and I'm putting that in air quotes.
Yeah.
Section 33 is also meant to be temporary in nature, right? And I think both Ben and Shannon pointed that out when they were discussing it on your show. It's supposed to be reviewed every 5 years, which is a natural sort of clock to it because if you have a majority government, even at the end of that majority government in 4 years' time, you're going to have another election. So presumably, if you had a population that was super pissed off about the invoking of Section 33, the next time they go to the ballot box is when they get their voice heard, right? And then the third thing that the feds are asking them to do, the court that is that just because Section 33 is invoked doesn't mean the court can't make a pronouncement of whether or not the law that is invoking Section 33 is violating a right that would otherwise be guaranteed by the charter. So those are the three things that the feds are asking. This came out last week. The leak memo that you referred to on Alberta side came out. And right now you have a situation where up until now, the federal government has been getting along quite swimmingly with the provinces, including Alberta, right? So you've got a lot of goodwill, especially in Alberta, because there's has been a page that's been turned, so to say, from the previous relationship.
Seems like it.
And it doesn't seem like they need to be picking a fight with the provinces right now. I think the timing's somewhat unfortunate. I think there's a lot of, again, hyperbole coming online from conservative circles saying that the feds are asking to abolish Section 33, which is not what they're doing at all. And also in the backdrop of this, over in Quebec, you have a, very charismatic, young Parti Québécois leader that is leading in the polls. So I don't know if this is the time to be stoking Quebec separatism when you have got Alberta separatism brewing. Everything seems like it's in this weird balance, but any little thing can kind of put that off kilter. And I don't think that's a position Carney and the feds want to be in.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the Quebec situation polling there in just a second, but I will say this, on the ground in Alberta, I only speak to my own personal experience. I only speak to my own anecdotal observations, but it seems that the more that the Alberta government and the feds, in other words, the more that Danielle Smith and Mark Carney are getting along, it's like, I won't say nobody's talking about Alberta separation, but there's been this fascinating thing happening. It's like, somebody kind of throws a blanket on the beginning of a grass fire. And it just kind of, I'm not going to say that everybody's changed their mind. I'm not going to say that potentially 1 and 4 or 1 and 3 wouldn't still like to go it alone. But I think that it sucks the wind right out of the sails. Like in so many ways as Mark Carney winning Liberal leadership and saying, yeah, we're going to cancel the consumer carbon tax, kind of like sucked the wind out of the sails of the Poilievre conservative machine to a pretty significant degree. The fact that the Prime Minister and the Premier, most especially during the Prime Minister's most recent Edmonton visit, were like snapping photos together, speaking, I don't know if I would say glowingly about each other, but way more positive than it was with Danielle Smith and Justin Trudeau. It's just like, we don't I'm even going by emails we're getting to the show, comments we're getting or not getting in the live chat. I recognize we're out of the slower summer news cycle, so maybe people's attention are back onto things that are actually happening, but it's been really interesting to see over the past few weeks.
That is interesting because then it also, I think it kind of pokes open this whole notion that Alberta separatism that was being stoked perhaps by a few agitators, if you don't have that anger sort of there to kind of poke at, there goes the entire flame, if we're using your grass fire metaphor. You know what I mean? It's like you need that sort of level of general unrest in the background to kind of poke at these sort of divisions. And once that goes away, it's like, oh, okay, we actually all can get along. Yeah.
Hey, so you've obviously spent a ton of your life in Quebec. What's your take on what's happening there? The Parti Québécois is polling very strongly right now. Respondents to a recent poll, and I'll reference the Montreal Gazette's reporting on this, say that they believe that Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon would be the best Quebec premier because he best incarnates the change that they want to see. Quebec's, the incumbent, Premier Legault, polling in third place. What's happening there?
Yeah, I think you've got a situation where just every single voting demographic that would have voted for the CAQ, the incumbent party in the last few elections, is now kind of pissed at them, for all of the things that have been plaguing incumbent governments over the last few years. I think have finally caught up to François Legault and his government. I think it also, you noted that folks are gravitating towards the Parti Québécois because of the change. And I think part of that is generational change. If you throw up that photo again of the CAQ, the Quebec Liberals, now headed up by a former, federal cabinet minister, Pablo Rodriguez, and then you've got Mr. PSPP there, you can see quite clearly that, two of those guys are a lot older than he is. And I think you can rally a lot of change when you are a young, charismatic leader who can basically stand up in front of a mic and go, these two guys don't know what your plight is. They don't know, your day to day. I, however, do. And I think that is a very, appealing call at a time when there is a lot of economic uncertainty. Quebec separatism in general, or the notion of an independent Quebec, hasn't necessarily skyrocketed in like approval. It's not like there's been this whole switch of like now a ton of people want to separate. But I mean, the Parti Québécois has also said that they're looking for a referendum within their first, go at it, within their first mandate. So it's not like people are unaware of this, and it's kind of brewing in the background, but it'll be really interesting to see, how this ends up playing out.
Okay, I want to get to another story involving Quebec. Pretty significant arrest by the RCMP, 16 people trying to cross the border. What does that mean? As we zoom it out, what's the bigger picture? More with Supriya Dwivedi in just a moment in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Real Talkers, a reminder, if you ever want to chime in, you can join our live stream weekdays at 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern. You can find that conversation happening on YouTube, and you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people, so you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
Real Talk's live stream on 7 different platforms, presented by California Closets, the absolute bar none best in the business when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. Make the most of your space with custom organizational systems. Whether it's a beautiful new bookshelf, making the most of your stairways, that dream walk-in closet that you've always envisioned, or maybe transforming that home office / guest room into a space that works well for both with one of those beautiful Murphy beds. California Closets can design something that'll knock your socks off and not blow your budget, and all of it's guaranteed for life. You can book that free consultation today. Check in with the designer. Get a sense of what their vision might look like based on your prompts. That free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Athabasca University reminding you that tens of thousands of Canadians, plus international students, have made Athabasca University the starting point for their post-secondary journey, or maybe it's a return after years away, because AU is all about flexibility with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. That means you don't have to wait for September or January to get started. Open your options with the online offerings at Athabasca University. Learn more about the AU Advantage today by visiting athabascau.ca. And if you're a successful business owner and entrepreneur who's starting to spend a little more time reflecting on your retirement goals, you're going to want to have North Road Investment Council on your radar. You probably heard Marshall McAllister on the show last week talking about that quarter-point drop in the interest rate, what that says about the markets, what it might mean for you. The team at North Road works with successful Canadians who've built those careers, but now want to make sure that their wealth is being organized to deliver a successful retirement. In particular, they do a lot of work with folks in detail-driven professions, engineers, architects, dentists. If that sounds like you and you'd like to speak with their Edmonton-based team about expert navigation through the complexities of wealth accumulation and investment advisory, visit northroadic.com today and start a conversation built on clarity, discipline, and true alignment. That's North Road Investment Council online at northroadic.com. Supriya Dwivedi, our guest the first episode of every week. And Supriya, this was a story that kind of jumped off the page at me just because I think it could be a harbinger of things to come. As we talk about the ICE arrests and the crackdowns in the United States, we don't know a ton of details about this story in Quebec, but RCMP have confirmed over the weekend that officers arrested 16 people trying to cross that Canada-U.S. border into Quebec. It's not the first time we've seen a story like this, but what does it get you thinking about, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, you said harbinger of things to come. I think that's absolutely correct. We saw, was it last week that Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, was testifying and basically said that there's like been an uptick of, I think he may have said terrorism, but I think he was implying that there are a bunch of not so good folks entering into the U.S. from Canada, and that he's quite concerned about that northern border. Well, I mean, is that the flow of people, or is the flow of people coming the other way from the U.S. to Canada? And should we be accusing them of not fortifying that northern border, right? But I think this is, as the weather, gets colder, we're likely going to see a lot more of this. That particular crossing that you had referred to in Quebec is quite porous, right? Like we talk about our border being obviously with the U.S., I think it's like the world's largest undefended border or something like that. So there's lots of pockets. I would also say in some of these border towns in and around, everywhere, but I can speak to this town in Quebec where I like sort of grew up in the Eastern Townships. It's very normal for folks just to, in the before times to walk back and forth, to do, you spend a day there shopping, you come back, like things were quite malleable between the two countries. That's obviously, things have changed. And so as we start to see some more people come through, I think you're going to have not only in the U.S.-Canada relations having that become a bit of a strain. But if I was the Conservatives, or if I was, an opposition party member, I would be accusing the government of not doing enough of securing our border and making that into a bit of an issue, which is what we've seen the Conservatives do in the past, and I'd expect them to do the exact same thing again.
Is it a fair point though? Like, I mean, was it? Did you say Stansted, Quebec? Right back in August, I think 44 RCMP intercepted 44 people trying to cross the border. It's interesting, right? Because you look at the Canada-U.S. border. I mean, I remember I went to school in Langley, BC, right by like Aldergrove and Abbotsford. It's farm country. And there would be stories all the time, mostly about weed, but of people like packing backpacks full of weed, right? And they'd like drive down the road. I think they called it like Mile Zero or whatever outside Aldergrove, BC. Anybody near there will know. And they would like toss huge backpacks just over the fence. And then like somebody would like run out from the trees an hour later or whatever and like grab the backpack. Very unsophisticated, all anecdotal, maybe college story bullshit. I don't know. But we've kind of enjoyed that with the United States in the sense that up until recently, up until the Trump comments, about the 51st state and everything else, we didn't really think a lot about it. As a matter of fact, didn't we all kind of proudly tell international visitors all the time that this was essentially like the longest, like we talked about our relationship with the United States. It was like the longest, we described it as the longest unpatrolled border in the world. And obviously, it feels like that's going to have to change, perhaps with an impetus from the White House, perhaps with Canadians putting pressure on their own government, seeing, more undocumented migrants trying to cross into Canada. I mean, it feels like everything's changing.
Yeah, we did see a little bit of this, though, in the first Trump administration, where, there was a bit of an uptick, or at least seemingly there was an uptick of folks crossing over from the U.S. into Canada at that time. And because of this safe third country agreement that we have with the U.S., they're essentially considered to be safe. So we can't necessarily be a haven for anybody seeking refuge or asylum because we're considered as safe as the U.S. is. Now, I think there has been, since the first Trump administration, quite a few instances of folks being like, well, I don't know if that's really the case, right? But that is something it's an international sort of agreement, so that's not really a Canada-U.S. sort of thing. We can, in fact, amend it, I guess, if we wanted to, but that would have to fully acknowledge, first and foremost, from our end, that the U.S. is no longer really considered safe. And again, I don't know if that's a thing that we want Carney saying out loud at a time when we're in active trade negotiations.
Hey, what do you make, sticking with stories out of the United States, this Kamala Harris statement? I'm sure you're familiar with it, obviously, but basically reveals in her forthcoming memoir that Pete Buttigieg was her top running mate pick for the most recent election, says, but figured it was too risky of a move, she tells The Atlantic.
Oh, Ryan, what is wrong? What is wrong with the Democrats? Yes, therein lies the entire problem with the Harris campaign, trying to appeal to this non-existent median or centrist voter while ignoring the actual people that would willingly vote for you and would put in, hours and dollars to help you win that election. She basically, let's say the quiet part out loud, she basically went, America can't vote for a gay guy and a black woman at the same time. So we're not going to do that. We're going to move along my list of white dudes that I've shortlisted for VP, which again, I guess it's a fine thing to think. It's okay to think. But the fact that she put that in writing and said it out loud basically just shows how broken the entire establishment Dem situation really is. Pete Buttigieg is a guy, he's young, very good at, the explaining complicated things like a normal person, which is something that the Democrats are sorely lacking. And, this is by no means a knock on Tim Walz. I think he did a great job. And I think, if anything, the Harris campaign kind of kept him on a short leash for no good reason. But I think, I've kind of debated, do I actually want to read this book or not when it comes out? Because I find all of these memoirs kind of bleh after a while. But now I want to read it just because it's going to make me mad, and then I'll have something to complain about when we talk.
Well, you can come on and we can just do a whole thing where you just, and you're like, and now to page 111.
Yeah, maybe, exactly.
Why don't we do Supriya and Jespo's book club, and we can give it, I'm going to need a month. We can't do every week. I need a month to get through it, and then we can just go through and read through it, and you can just bleh, wherever you need to do it. The memoir, 107 Days, and this is reporting, by the way, by The Atlantic. Here's the quote. She adds another layer to it. You laid it out beautifully, but she adds even another layer. She writes, quote, "We were already asking a lot of America to accept a black woman married to a Jewish man. Part of me wanted to say, screw it, let's just do it. But knowing what was at stake, it was too big of a risk. And I think Pete also knew that, to our mutual sadness." Do you think that the United States would elect a black woman president married to a Jewish man with a gay married vice president?
I don't think that's the tagline you put on the Dem campaign. I think you're thinking very lowly of the American people if the first and primary, place your brain goes is, well, it can't be a black woman married to a Jewish man and then have a gay guy in there. Come on. And again, I think, the entire problem, and you see this, to be fair to the Democrats, this isn't necessarily just a Democratic problem, but you see this across with left-leaning, center-left, establishment political parties. They're constantly trying to get this centrist voter instead of exciting the actual people that have been known to put dollars and hours to your organization and to your political project. So just constantly barking up the wrong tree. It's all that time she spent with Liz Cheney. How many centrist Republican voters did that get? I don't think very many, if at all, Ryan.
Yeah. I asked ChatGPT to rewrite that clip in the context of the other ticket. So they've got this for JD Vance's memoir to come. We were already asking a lot of America to take back Donald Trump's scandals, indictments, chaos, and then to hand the country over to J.D. Vance, a guy who spent half his career saying Trump was dangerous before deciding he was a genius. And part of me wanted to say, screw it, let's just lean all the way in. But knowing what was at stake, we realized that might be one circus too many. And I think Trump knew it too. So there you go. There it is from the other side of the coin.
I like that we're equal opportunity.
To reveal something I'm very excited about in our personal life, we get to hang out in person in Toronto in a few days. Very much looking forward to that, and we'll be back at it next Monday right here on the show. Thanks for doing it. But hey, before we go, can I ask you something real quick? Did you happen to? My French is absolutely pathetic.
It's okay, man. You're from out there. It's
but
okay.
no, there's a lot of francophone communities in Alberta that would push back and insist to me that I improve my French. So I haven't seen Rachel Gilmer on Tout Le Monde, but I did see her post about it. Maybe I'll just ask you about it real quick before you. This is for Anglophones that are listening to this interview, which will be the majority. Talk to me about the magnitude of this show, the influence or the sway that it has in Quebec, and the significance of her being on there.
Yeah, so Tout le monde en parle is a Sunday night talk show that airs in Quebec. It's the number one it's like appointment tuning. Like everybody on a Sunday night in Quebec, that's generally what they're watching. If for politicians, particularly at the federal level, we consider these interviews to be like make or break for the Quebec vote by and large. So Rachel Gilmore was on last night speaking about her experience of being targeted by the far right in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's horrific assassination. And, I just think it's really interesting that Quebec media has been covering this, not only in print, but now their largest talk show has covered it. And yet there has been nary a mention, Ryan, from English legacy mainstream media. And I think that just is a shame. I think we're doing a disservice to folks by not explaining the information ecosystem and how the right tends to target journalists or people just in general that they disagree with. And I don't know, I just think the dichotomy here of the French Quebec media going all in and English, media and the rest of Canada legacy-wise being completely silent is a real interesting juxtaposition.
Appreciate you keeping it on the radar. We'll have more to chat about within a week, and I'll see you in a few days, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Sounds good, Ryan. Talk soon.
All right. Supriya Dwivedi joining us first episode of every week in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. We want to know what you hear about what you had to say. Obviously covering a ton of ground. I'm curious to see the comments that'll come in on the UFC fight night on the White House lawn. I just think it's mind-blowing. I don't have a personal problem with it. I'm not an American citizen, and I bet a ton of Americans are going to probably suggest that at the people's house that this is the exact sort of thing that should be happening. But remember the Zelensky thing? I can't be the only one. That was the very first thing I thought of when the president of the United States himself, Donald Trump, absolutely chastised a leader in wartime, a wartime leader, for not wearing a suit to the White House. And then you have this. UFC. Unbelievable stuff. Sonya Sharp wants to be the next mayor of Calgary, and she's going to be joining us in 90 seconds to talk to us about her vision for Alberta's biggest city and obviously for a major player on the national economic stage. Sonya Sharp coming up in just a second. I want to let you know that this conversation is happening with the support of Friesen Brothers for 70 years. Proudly Alberta-owned and Alberta grown. Friesen Brothers, the first of every month, knocking 15% off your grocery purchases of $75 or more. And that's not where the savings stop. Check out their website, friesen.com, where you can pick this up in store, their Family Essentials flyer. We love this. Quality food for low prices every day, and they have monthly recipes in there as well. So you can feed your family on a budget. That's not a bad word. Feed your family on a budget. Save on the everyday products that you use most. The Friesen Brothers Meal Solutions incorporate great quality products that they always have. Alberta beef, Alberta pork, chicken, fresh produce, quality grocery products. Of course, perfect family meal solutions at everyday low prices. Make sure you join their Smart Shopper Savings program as well. They'll email you that flyer every single week. Our friends at UCAN Youth Services, what an incredible showing on a recent episode of Real Talk. If you missed it, check out our podcast archive or our YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody that subscribes there. This young fella, Bryce McCartney, 19 years of age, joins us and talks about his involvement in their Ready to Work programs and how it's absolutely opening doors for him and allowing him to, I'm not going to say change his life, because honestly, Bryce has been this masterpiece in motion ever since he was a young kid, grappling with some of the most remarkable challenges we could ever imagine. Experiencing homelessness, dad was a drug dealer, mom wasn't around. Bryce knew he needed somebody to enable him, somebody to be able to put tools in front of him and help him plot out his own path, and that's exactly what he's doing. Bryce is one of hundreds of UCAN alum that are making big differences in communities around them, but most importantly, they're staying out of harm's way, and they're on a path of economic independence. That's what UCAN is all about. You can learn more about it today by visiting ucan.ca. And Pathways Alliance, you heard the Prime Minister talk about it, Mark Carney, when he was with us on the 10th of September. Canada benefits from a strong energy sector, and with the oil and gas sector supporting almost 500,000 jobs across Canada while generating billions of dollars in tax and royalty revenue, Pathways Alliance is 6 of Canada's largest oil sands companies working together to help grow Canada's economy. This will fund roads, bridges, schools. You know that $34 billion in income taxes and royalties paid by industry in 2023 alone? You can learn more about this and the project that the Prime Minister was talking about by visiting pathwaysalliance.ca. We've been talking about this for obvious reasons for quite some time. Albertans will go to the polls on the 20th of October, and we will guaranteed see changes in the capital city at City Hall, most notably with the mayor and the makeup of council, and we could very likely see changes down in Calgary as well. That's where Sonya Sharp is running to be Calgary's next mayor, and she joins us one-on-one as we continue our feature interviews with the major candidates in those two cities. Sonya, welcome to the show, and thanks for making time for us.
Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I would imagine that you and your team, I don't ask how you spent your weekend because I guess you were pounding the pavement and hitting the doors. Has that been every day so far?
Yep. We just finished sitting as a council last week. So now today is nomination day. So if you're running in the October election, today's the day you put all your papers in, and then it's about 28 days of hard work and convincing Calgarians why you're the right person for the job.
Yeah. So what are you hearing from the doors? First of all, before what you're telling them, what are you hearing? What do you perceive to be the so-called ballot box question in Calgary?
I'm seeing two, actually, and it's hard because they're very different. But public safety is a big conversation at the front doors, and what happened in Calgary last year around blanket rezoning, when we did a swooping change to what communities would look like and taking people out of the conversation. So those have been two big things. And the other thing is also hearing infrastructure. Obviously, with the water main break last year, it's still top of mind for people. And let's not forget that Calgarians want council to lead City Hall, not administration. And there's a bit of that going on, and it has been for the last couple of years. So a leader that can regain control of City Hall, and those are the conversations we're having.
Are you at a disadvantage having been a member of, an incumbent, essentially, a member of the most recent council? I know that a lot of people are probably, when they're talking about change, they're not going to hand the keys over to somebody that was already there for the past 4 years. What are you telling them?
I think that I have really defined myself as the leader of the opposition on council. I'm part of the minority that tried to make change during the last 4 years. And so I would say I'm at an advantage, to be honest. I not only have the 4 years on council, I have 16 years of business experience, but I did spend 20 years in City Hall. So I know everything that goes on behind the scenes. And so that's an advantage. And it was an advantage over the last 4 years. It's just that, I didn't have the 8 votes to make some of the things happen that we wanted it to happen. And so this is going to be different. And not only am I an incumbent, but I am working with a team of not just incumbents, but other candidates that are running in a slate to make sure that change does happen, because we all know that it takes 8 votes to make things change at City Hall. So we're running with a team called Communities First. And there are current members of council that have endorsed me to run for mayor, but also these new candidates, which make up 10.
How would council, let's say, like hypothetically as an exercise here, had you been able to whip those votes over the previous 4 years, what do you think would be most demonstrably different? I want to get into some of the policy stuff you've talked about, the 500 cops, but what would look different?
What looked different right out of the gate, we wouldn't have declared a climate emergency. That would have been squashed because we would have had 8 votes. Most likely that we would not have had a reorg or realignment of the administration that really looked at kind of, building empires within. And I'm talking, this was the first month in 2021. And we would have had no blanket rezoning because I tried to stop it before it was even an idea to come to public hearing in 2023. We would have had less taxes. Me and my colleagues that work together quite often have found $170 million worth of savings over the last 4 years. So you wouldn't have seen the increase of taxes. You wouldn't have seen things being spent on that Calgarians don't want. You would have seen more money in certain things like, roads and filling potholes and public safety and things that mattered. And the really big thing that mattered this last 4 years was focusing on priorities that mattered to Calgarians and to members of council that were listening to them. A lot of the stuff that we've seen that inflated taxes really aren't showing you your value for your money. So there's a lot of things that would have changed. And in hindsight, here we are. And now I'm running for mayor to make a difference and make this, the safest, most affordable city in Canada. But the biggest thing too, when it comes to that, is public trust. We have lost a lot of trust from Calgarians over the last 4 years, and being classified as the most unliked council of history isn't something to be proud of. So here I am running to regain that trust and increase public safety and affordability for Calgarians.
How do you gain trust back? I mean, I know you probably say fiscal hawk, treat everyone's finances like they're my own, that sort of a thing. But what are you telling people face to face, eye to eye?
I'm just real. Like, I have raw conversations with people. I don't have a personal agenda. I don't have an ideological agenda. I'm here for you. And, I do this because I have a lot of passion for public service and doing the right things. And I would say to people, I have a pragmatic approach to decision making. And, I like to hear the criticism. I'm not afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations with people. And, even if they don't agree with me, it's respect that we have for each other. And it's really important. And you can't have everybody agree with you, because then that's not democracy. So knowing that you get to a door and someone might not believe in the vote you had, but you justify your why, even if they still don't just agree, there's a respect there. And that's important. And so those raw conversations, I enjoy having. I enjoy door knocking. I enjoy town halls. I really enjoy getting out to the public. And like I said, this is not a personal thing for me. I'm not running because I want the title of mayor. I'm not running because I have an agenda or, I'm doing this for Calgarians. It's time for a real change. And to put yourself out like this in knowing that there's an incumbent running for their seat, it's not easy. And the last time an incumbent was removed from their seat was when Ralph Klein ran in 1980. And so this has been a lot of work, and I'm excited about it, and I'm giving it my all. And I hope Calgarians are ready for change, because I'm going to bring it.
It's interesting you talk about the blanket rezoning, and I don't have to tell you, it's been like a huge the idea of like how cities should grow and address density challenges and housing prices and the whole 9 yards has been a major story through this election in both Calgary and Edmonton. What would be your fix? What's the right way to do it in a city that's forecasted to add 100,000 citizens over the next 10 years? Calgary saw more than 8% growth just last year alone. I mean, it's a massive issue, housing stock and the like. How do you think it should be built properly?
You can encourage higher density and smart growth together. And you have to also think about, like, Calgary has a large landscape, and we have a lot of suburban communities that are, looking for growth. And when you talk about affordability, some of these outlying communities are where people can afford to live. Denser communities downtown are expensive. And you need to make sure that you're maintaining community character, and you can't have a one size fits all. And so some of the communities in Calgary, out and even in my ward that I represent, or Ward 2, have seen the higher density at a more of affordable living. And as you just decide that you're going to do a one size fits all, but you're removing people from the process, that's when people got angry. And, they want to be able to speak to things in their community. This is one of the biggest single investments of their lives. And so they want to say, I really like this development, or I don't like this development, and why. And so there can be a balance. And there also is a narrative out there that, there's they vilify, or suburban living versus, downtown living. You can't do that. We've got to be a city for everybody. And people want to live in suburban Calgary, let them. And if people want to live downtown, let them. And so they have to have choices, and they have to have amenities. And so when we talk about growing cities and we talk about people moving here, we also talk about a lot of families living together. My mom and dad live with me, and we talk about generational houses. And so there's a lot of people moving here that do need a little bit extra space. And some of these, units being built downtown aren't really feasible for some of these growing families or families that are moving here. And so you really need to make sure that you demonstrate the financial, I would say, financial reason of why sometimes suburban development's a little bit more affordable than downtown, but also demonstrate transparency. And so when you're trying to take people out of a process, they don't really feel like it's transparent and things are just being approved.
You think Calgary has a spending problem or a revenue problem? Like, when you say lower taxes, everyone's going to say, well, what would you cut? But do you believe that Calgary can do more commercial, obviously downtown property taxes would be huge. There's we had Tom Mailer on. I'm sure you know him with the city of Calgary on August 27th. I'll reference this. If people want to check it out, the episode's called Get Rich Alberta Edition. And we stacked up kind of the tale of two cities, Calgary versus Edmonton. And our Edmonton experts with the DBA here in the Edmonton Chamber assessed Calgary as 10 years ahead of the capital city when it comes to its downtown reinvention. But Tom noted that there's still a lot of work to do. Where does the money come from?
So I don't think we have a revenue problem. I think that we have a spending problem, and we do need to get our downtown up and going. We do need to get that tax base growing. We are seeing still a lot of vacancy, more people and amenities we can get downtown, the increased, tax base we can grow. That actually helps communities outside downtown with the lower taxes. Our residential tax is still high, and it's 5.4%. And that's what we're seeing for this year. We just got a preview last week. But there are things missing in that budget that council wanted. And there are things missing in that budget that I know constituents wanted. And so the revenue is there and we're generating in that. And you do see that we do get a bit of a variance every year. And and we hear from Calgarians, why do we have a variance? Why can't you lower my taxes? And so there was a citizen satisfaction survey that was conducted, and it's important to listen to that. It's important to listen to the citizen satisfaction survey, but you need to balance that out with what council's priorities are. And so, we have to also figure out what sort of audience are we attracting downtown again. And so we've done a great job in the conversions. Yes, we are ahead of our capital city, but we need to start incorporating those amenities, those grocery stores, the rec facilities to drive people to want to live downtown. And that's really important. But the other part of all of that is the safety component. And that's number one thing that I'm campaigning on. And if you don't have a safe city, you will not have people move here. You will not have people want to be downtown. You won't have people want to take your trains. So, myself and my colleagues that are working together on this slate, safety is a priority. We want to increase the number of police officers to population just to get us where we need to be as a top 5 in Canada, not let alone surpassing that. And we need to think about a 24/7 police station downtown. We need all of these things if we're going to be a growing city and want people to live downtown. These are really important things for your city. And so I would say revenue we're collecting, what we're spending money on can be more efficient.
You've pledged to hire 500 more police officers just by a quick Google. That's almost a 25% increase in the size of the police service down in Calgary. You've also talked about, I don't know what word you'd prefer, but essentially decommissioning or closing. You called on the province to close Calgary's downtown supervised consumption service. You made the announcement actually right across the street from the Sheldon Schumer Health Center where that goes down. You said that it's just not working for people. Take us into what you think the alternative plan would look like, or how you would envision harm reduction remaining as a pillar, I'm assuming, of crime reduction and life-saving work down in Calgary.
Yeah, so the 500 is, something we're asking for throughout this next budget and the next couple of years. It's not something we're asking out of the gate for November, but we need to see a plan from the police commission and the chief. So that's kind of one thing. And I will, I pledged to also have my first meeting with the police chief and the commission when I'm elected. Now, the consumption site is impacting a lot of what's happening outside the Sheldon. And so the responsibility, and this comes back to roles and responsibilities of government. What happens in the Schumer and what happens in the consumption area is it's in the governance of province of Alberta. And what happens outside those walls and on the street and the sidewalks is the responsibility of city council. And, when you walk around that area and our parks can't be used, the church has to be boarded up, that is not safe for anyone. And not just the people that, walk downtown to go to work, but also the less vulnerable. It cannot be safe for anybody right now. And so we've had a lot of push and pull, and whose responsibility is this? Well, the responsibility outside those walls is my responsibility. And so I have called on the province to look at a plan, and they've got to figure out that plan. Now, saying that, we do have a role to play here when it comes to land. The city of Calgary has a lot of land. If the government of Alberta says to us, listen, we need 4 locations in Calgary. Do you have 4 plots of land where we can, support people that need the support of mental health and addiction, and we can build facilities? I'll be the first one to jump up and say, here are your 4 pieces of land. And so how can we facilitate that? And we are a regulatory, permitting system and land facilitator. But what happens inside those buildings is the government of Alberta and Alberta Health Services. And yeah, they've got to step up. We've got to get this going, but everybody needs to be on the same page. So, again, those conversations need to be had, but with all our partners, and also those that are providing the services like the Alpha House and the Drop-In Center. And we really need to make sure that we are compassionately caring for everybody that needs the support. But, it's funny because I got a lot of criticism about this all. But what I would say to people is, don't you want everyone in this world to have dignity? Because there is dignity to be had even for people that need these services. And when they're walking down the street and they look helpless and they need help, that's not a form of dignity at all. Like, you come into this world with dignity, I hope you're leaving this world with dignity. And so I will do my best as a mayor to support all of that work, but it comes with being in my lane, and same with the province.
Pretty interesting developments over the past number of years, just these relationships. And I mean, I could spend all this time talking about the provincial and federal jurisdictions, but kind of the general sense has been that Danielle Smith's UCP government has essentially been downloading or assigning its plan to the cities in many different ways. And the Green Line is a good example down in Calgary. Just your comments on the state of the relationship between Calgary City Council, which you obviously saw. You were there working every single day. What you think a relationship might look like with the province if you were mayor?
There's got to be better collaboration between the government of Alberta and the city of Calgary, and it starts with respect. It stops with conversations on social media. It starts with picking up the phone and knowing that you serve the same people. And one thing is, Calgarians will always come first to me, and I will always fight for the best thing for Calgarians. And so we really need to make sure we advocate to the provincial government when we need the support, and not accepting that download responsibility. But not just that, we got to work together to fight for what we need from the federal government. And that's really important, right? And so when you have governments together that can fight for the greater good, for, funding, for infrastructure, for mental health and addiction, for housing, and you're all on the same page, things can happen very quickly, and they can happen with respect. And we won't always see eye to eye on things, and that's okay. But we really need to make sure that we advocate for Calgary's priorities, regardless of which government's in power. And I always say it's the government of Alberta, the government of Canada. And I will work really hard to make sure that, my representation is Calgarians. But when it comes to, the work we did on the event center, it worked out, where we had to have those compromises and those conversations. When we talked about the Green Line, again, having these conversations on social media is not the right approach. Picking up the phone, having those conversations, resetting things is where we're at. And we're at a place now where the Green Line will start from, event center and go south as far as we can. But then we need to open up that conversation again about what downtown looks like. And so again, respect is really important in our elected officials, because also Calgarians are looking at that. If you guys are fighting on social media, which has happened over the last 4 years, you're losing that trust and respect from Calgarians, and it's a reputational risk. So I would say that my whole goal is to collaborate, build a better relationship with the government of Alberta, and make sure that we are getting the best things we can for Calgarians.
I want to talk to you. We're talking to Sonya Sharp. If you're just joining our live stream presented by California Closets, Calgary councillor wants to be the next mayor of Calgary. I want to talk to you about the future of business and the future of the city as you see it. It's no surprise, obviously, to hear from, I think, business owners and entrepreneurs that are still sort of feeling like they're getting out of that slump that they hit, the scare kids during the pandemic, and while mentally many of us may have sort of moved on from that, the reality is that businesses are continuing to struggle. What's your plea or what's your promise to entrepreneurs in a city that has always celebrated its entrepreneurial spirit? Where do you see the biggest challenges, and what can you do about it?
Two of the biggest challenges I see is still removing the red tape. Like I said, we're a regulatory body, and when it comes to permitting and making sure that people have their doors open. The second is making sure the impact of infrastructure that's in our control, the city of Calgary's control, is not debilitating their businesses. And you looked at Marda Loop, we've seen what's happening now in Stephen Avenue, a bit of what's happening in West Hillhurst and Bridgeland. You cannot be the reason. The city can never be the reason a business closes their doors. A pandemic and things outside your control, that you cannot, you can't control that. You can facilitate, making sure there's supports there, but you can never be the hindrance to a business. And I led the business and economy portfolio when I was in administration. I had my own business experience for the last 16 years. I was the chair of the business advisory committee, and I have something coming out a little bit later this week on business support. But one thing is, the city needs to remove barriers to open and still become that business-friendly city. And yes, like you said, we have such an entrepreneurial spirit here, and we need to keep that here, but we also need to attract it and make sure that we're continuing that we are the city of choice for business and making sure we're not a problem for them.
So the energy transition, I respect your point on the climate emergency. Mayor Gondek actually made that statement right here on Real Talk in an exclusive interview the morning after the election. I remember it just exploded when she said it. But the energy transition globally is a reality. So what would be your plan for Calgary to embrace those opportunities while protecting, its bread and butter, its traditional industries, oil and gas? How do you find that balance? How do you ride that line?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the one thing that came out of that climate emergency right out of the gate was vilifying the oil and gas sector. And you can't do that. You can't vilify the industries that made Calgary. What you do is you continue to embrace them and support new sectors and industries that want to move here. Now, when it comes to climate and what the city can control, we can only control so much within our mandate under municipal jurisdiction. And so it's really important that we lead by example and we build green where we can in our own buildings that we own, and support, or the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and moving forward. But, it's not that we can just change everything. And, people were like, have you looked out the window and look at the fires and look at all that? I'm like, I get that. I'm not a climate denier. But when it comes to municipal jurisdiction, we can only do so much. The most important thing is when you turn your tap on, you have clean running water. And, last summer we had a whole community that didn't have that. And so really what's important is staying in our lane and supporting other governments and what they're doing. And if it's a means of receiving funding from federal government or provincial government in things we can do to support, changes to, building homes in Calgary, like solar panels, or supporting some of the hail damage, we will welcome that. But we can't be the leaders in that. We play a supporting role in all of this. But to come out and say we're declaring a climate emergency and we're going to be, leading edge and leading way, I think there was a bit of a, what lane are we supposed to be in? And there was a lot of industries that pushed back and said, we are doing what we can to be part of net zero, but we've got to focus on what matters to Calgarians in our lane. And that's either we're leading in things, advocating, or supporting. And what role is that when it comes to municipal government? That's what comes back to being, back to the basics. And really, there's been a lot of talk about going backwards in order to get going forward. And I think that's where we're headed right now.
This is Sonya Sharp joining us on Real Talk. You can check out her website for more information on her campaign and the community's first team. That's sharpformayor.ca. Sonya, thanks for joining us on Nomination Day. I know it's a big one, and we will talk to you on the 10th of October for our Real Talk Calgary Mayoral Candidates Roundtable. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care.
Thanks, Sonya. Appreciate that very much. Let us know what you think. Again, Sonya Sharp. We've now had conversations with, we've kind of run the gamut down in Calgary, Edmonton as well. So through our video, YouTube and podcast archives, you can check out those interviews. Johnny, do I dare try to start naming them all offhand? I think we've had Farkas, we've had Gondek, we've had Sharp, we've had Thiessen, we've gone through all the Calgary candidates, and here in Edmonton, Cartmel launched with us. Walters, Knack, had Raheem Jaffer on, kind of a very compelling guy. Omar Mohammed joined us as well.
Yeah.
So we've got the candidates covered. We'll have a 5. I feel like I'm missing someone. We'll have a 5 candidate Real Talk Roundtable. The 5 top people will say, well, how are you deciding who you're inviting or who's going to be on these roundtables, these debates? That's what it'll be. And it will follow a traditional and timed out equitable debate structure. Obviously, that's what we promised to those candidates. We'll have 5 of them joining us out of Calgary on the 10th of October. Coming up on the 3rd of October, sooner, obviously the 3rd of October, that's a Friday. We'll have the top 3 polling mayoral candidates in Edmonton joining us in studio. So should be a good one. A ring-a-ding-dong dandy. You were on the highway. You were out and about this weekend.
Yeah.
How was your trip out to Jasper?
It was good. Yeah.
It was
great. Yeah. Good to see the people. Jasperites. Is that what you call them?
Yeah. Jasperites. That's right. What a time of year to be out there, though.
Yeah.
The
It's
leaves
nice.
starting to change on the highway drive.
I love it. There was a bit of a tornado on the way back, though. It was
Man,
crazy,
that was wild. We
Yeah,
experienced
I
that.
honestly thought I was gonna drive into a tornado for about 20 minutes. It was pretty wild. You know when you're driving like 110 and then the wind picks up and you gotta brace the wheel a little more. You think you're gonna go in the ditch. Yeah, that's what I was experiencing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you made it back safe and
Oh,
sound,
thank you, sir.
pal. Maybe some photos or something we could see in my Jasper memories coming up on Wednesday.
I
Can
know
I lean on you?
promised you, but I did get one just because it was kind of
You were kind of in and out, right?
yeah, and I was busy with a wedding, but it was surreal, like having the we had the reception at Pyramid Lake Lodge, and the ceremony was at like the Alberta Day, the Athabasca Day Service Day Use area.
Yeah.
And it's wild because doing the ceremony, you look to your left, and it's not in the photos of where you're looking at the mountains and the actual ceremony spot, like the archway. But if you look to the left, it's just there's a huge section of just burnt out trees sitting there, and it was just surreal to look back and like. There's a huge section of nature that's been carved out by fire, and then over here it's just pristine.
Yeah,
there's water and
It's
there's
wild.
mountains. And then went downtown. I'm sure you've seen like the Esso burnt to the ground there,
Yeah.
and just took some photos again of like completely burnt, hollowed out, pumps from a gas station, and then right in the background as I'm taking the photo is just like birds flying by, mountain views with beautiful. It's really strange how wildfire works. Like it jumps. It literally jumps. When you hear about wildfires like jumping water and jumping, it literally does. Like little spitfires can go here and there, but they don't touch other areas.
It's like people talk
wild.
about. You're right, and people talk. It's the same as like the paths, like when the tornadoes touch down, and like. I was going to say Kansas, but like the United States has that whole kind of Oklahoma, not that we haven't had them here too, but down there, it's like you'll see they'll just cut a swath through a community and you'll have one street just leveled and then the rest is totally fine. We did we've been hearing from, obviously with so many friends and people that we care about in Jasper, we're getting updates. Jasper Counselor Wendy Hall sent me a text the other day and it was a video of it was just like a ceiling fan with a light, that was all it was, and then it's just on off, the light going on and off, and then she sends a text and she says, "We have lights that we can turn on and off." They've had their modular home and it's just been dropped off, and I know for a lot of homes and businesses that's where that recovery is happening. So it's a big deal and great to see. Ms. Katie in our live chat, Ms. Katie, thank you for your YouTube membership. We sure appreciate it. She says Jeff Davison, another candidate down in Calgary, says, has he been on the show? I guess, did I not mention him? I meant to mention him. He was, of course, had a great interview actually on the 9th of July. You can find that again on our YouTube channel or in our podcast archives. Jeff kind of grabbed everybody's attention when he came on and just basically said, Calgary is in trouble. As a matter of fact, we made that the headline of the highlight that you're seeing there. The full interview again on the 9th of July. Jeff Davison. So we've chatted with the Big Five in Calgary. We've chatted with the Big Five in Edmonton. So they're all on the record. And then on the 3rd and the 10th of October, we've got those 2 roundtables to get you covered. Now, this isn't to say that we think that there are only councillors and mayors and school trustees being elected in 2 cities in Alberta. Obviously, there's a lot happening And to a certain degree, Real Talkers, we're looking to you for your insights and what you're paying attention to heading into October 20th, a big day today, nomination day. And of course, if you're voting in I don't know, are you voting in Hardisty? Are you voting in Grand Prairie? Looking at a guaranteed new mayor in St. Albert. That's another example. I know a lot of people are talking about Medicine Hat this election. There's some interesting things happening there. Let us know from your neck of the woods what you're paying attention to. Asked Ms. Sharp today. First question out of the gates. What's the ballot box question? I always find that to be most interesting, not just for the insights, but it kind of gives you a sense of what they're picking up at the doors. I think I told you we heard from our buddy Harman Candola, who was on the show. He's officially thrown his hat in the ring for council, and it was a recent episode in the show. You remember this? It caused some real ripples when Harman said, "Yeah, I don't think infill's really an election issue, at least not where I'm running." Harman since has been hitting the doors, and he reached out to me and he said, "I've been talking to people at the doors." He goes, "Infill is definitely an election issue." He wrote, "Oh man." He just said, "Oh man," in his text. And so, that's an example of how things can change. And we want to know what the big story is in your communities as Albertans get ready to vote. Before I share some closing thoughts, something important and on my heart, I did want to talk to you about how Albertans are winning right now. Alberta wins with Play Alberta. You can find out more at playalberta.ca. Not only is Play Alberta the most safe and secure way to bet casino, sports, and lottery online, and not only does all revenue go right back to the province, which is a big deal, by the way, so it sets it apart from a lot of the other options. All of the money stays here in Alberta, helping Alberta charities. But Albertans are also winning big every single day. 10, 50, even as much as $100,000 won daily on Play Alberta. They've even made millionaires. And best of all, for a limited time only, new players can receive a $1,000 casino bonus. You can download the Play Alberta app anywhere you get your apps. Check out their great offers and get started today. And don't forget, Thursdays on Real Talk, Play Alberta presents Alberta Wins, which is an opportunity for us basically to celebrate the province that we're so proud to call home. That's Alberta Wins, presented by Play Alberta, Thursdays right here on Real Talk. And if you're like me, this is a message to all the golfers out there, to all you golfers out there. You're doing everything you can to squeeze in a couple of more rounds before all the leaves fall, before the snow flies. Our friends at the Ranch Golf and Country Club, that's Alberta's #1 public course and the home course of the Real Talk Golf Classic, ready to welcome you with beautiful September conditions. You can book your tee time online. Check out the course, a fun, unique layout, premier conditions. I'm always proud to host guests out at the ranch. Just a couple of years ago, Score Golf Magazine ranked the ranch as offering the best value in the capital city, #2 best value in Alberta, top 30 best value in Canada, just 20 minutes from Edmonton's downtown. You can book your tee time today at theranchgolf.com. When you're out there, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. Got a lot of people talking about Calgary in our live chat here, powered by Park Power, and for whatever reason, I haven't seen all the comments. People are talking about Ed Whalen and Stampede Wrestling, an absolutely iconic broadcaster. And Stampede Wrestling, I don't even think, Johnny, that you were born. I don't think you were born when Stampede Wrestling was in its heyday.
I don't know nothing about it.
This was like it was like sort of like it's not proper for me to say Bush League WWE, because Bush League is a pejorative and an insult, and that's not how I mean it. But it was kind of like B-list WWE, but the production value for a down home grassroots wrestling circuit was absolutely incredible. And this was like, you think like to the WWE of like the Hart Foundation in this, buddy, I'm already using up all my wrestling knowledge in 3 sentences. This is going to be the end of it. But Calgary graduated so many all-time great wrestlers, and so many of them got their starts in Stampede Wrestling. And Ed Whalen was the legend that called it all to this day. And I wonder if they'll have this at the new, what are they calling it? Is it Scotiabank Place, the new Calgary Arena? I think it's Scotia Place, I think they're calling it. I would imagine they'll keep it, but the Ed Whalen Media Lounge. Mm-hmm. So when the broadcast booth, when the press box, when the Media Lounge is named after a guy, a pretty big deal. UFC on the White House South Lawn. I was going to ask you about it.
GTFO.
No. What do you think? Is it funny? Is it something Americans can be proud of? It's about as America as it gets.
It's I don't know, man. I just wish the White House was a place of business again, a place of getting down to the hard work, you know. And no, I don't. It's not. Hey, I watch UFC, and I don't watch it as much as I used to. I was kind of a big watcher during the Conor McGregor heyday before he went absolutely Charlie Sheen insane with his life. But it seems a little lowbrow, like Supriya was alluding to. It's just kind of like, in all honesty, and I know people are gonna, say, well, you would like it if the Oilers went there. I don't like when any sports are involved with politics, especially the White House. And like here in Canada, like Parliament or whatever, like I thought it was cool that Carney went and skated with the Oilers before he was Prime Minister, but I just don't like it because no matter what happens, people are mad. People are mad when you go to the White House and you're a sports team, no matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. People are mad when politicians try to get involved in sports here in Canada. I don't mind if they go to the games, sit in a box, whatever. You want to go through the gauntlet of actually going up on the big screen and seeing if you get booed or cheered, go ahead. But I like that stuff separate. And I get when a team wins the Stanley Cup or the Super Bowl, they're probably going to go to the White House. But I would rather the president went to them. When a team goes to, the other way, it kind of looks like.
But I think that the visit to the White House is the big deal.
Yeah, it's a congratulations. I get it. But everyone always says the same thing. Like no matter if you're left-leaning or right-leaning as a player and an athlete, if you go to the White House, if you go see the Prime Minister, if you go somewhere where politics is involved, it looks like you're supporting, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to put out some sort of, presser afterwards where it's like, well, thank the president, but, don't agree with his policy. It gets so messy. Like, I would rather the president went to, the Chiefs locker room after the game or whatever, or if he's at the game, or I would rather the Prime Minister went to, Oilers, practice or training camp at the start of the next season, or the Panthers, whatever. The president went there, start of the next season, and said, "Hey, great job last year, whatever. Have another great season." But that's just me. I would rather it just be. I would rather it be like religion. Just separate church and state when it comes to sports.
In theory, remember politicians used to do that.
Well, they don't anymore.
Well,
they never really did, Ryan.
No,
come on. We were just talking about that today. I mean, how can you elect? Kamala Harris when she's a black woman with a Jewish husband running with a gay running mate. Yeah. Potentially, she was going to choose Pete.
Quite a quote, right?
Has there ever been? I mean, if you're going to want to be president, no matter what, if you're a man, woman, black, white, whatever, you're going to weave religion into your stint, right? Like, has there ever been a president who hasn't said, God bless America, you know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing. And the United States is a whole different thing. In God we trust, right, on their currency, course, right? Yeah. But it's interesting if you were to compare like the U.S. To Canada, or compare Canada to even jurisdictions within Canada. Unique nation states. I'm going to start a fight here. But like Quebec, right? Supriya talking about Quebec and kind of where that's going. I thought that I was grateful that we had a chance to. Supriya's basically split her life between Ontario and Quebec, right? So she's got like a real sense of. I think Supriya actually. We can clarify this, but I'm pretty sure she grew up like French is her first language. She's very comfortable, speaking about what's happened and what she's seen in Quebec over her years coming up. But in Quebec, obviously, and sort of the religion laws that they've had around there about no religious symbols in their legislature, in schools, in public buildings and facilities. And we get routinely, I would say, emails from you real talkers. I'd say like 10 a year, just specifically on religious symbols in Quebec, which I always find is fascinating because it resonates with people and it pops up again and again. I want to give Michael Scott credit. We're bouncing around here a little bit, but Michael.
From The Office?
Right? Michael, world's best boss, perfectly described Stampede Wrestling for me because I didn't find the words. I blew it. I did not want to say Bush League WWE because that's not the right. And then Michael just nailed it. It is the CFL of wrestling.
Okay.
It's the CFL of wrestling.
Okay.
That is the perfect way to put it.
All right.
The CFL is a proud league with wonderful athletes, with rabid fans, the whole 9 yards, but it's not the NFL. How's that? Michael, that's 2 points for you on the Real Talk scoreboard. And how about this for Ms. KD, who is sharing with us her personal experience growing up in Calgary. So she had the biggest crush on Bret Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart, John.
Yeah, that
says,
that greasy curly hair. Everyone loved it.
Man, nobody did it like Bret the Hitman Hart.
Half perm, I
She
believe
says,
they
but
call it.
all the girls had a crush on Bret Hart. He was a few years younger. Owen, may he rest in peace, was a couple years younger. She says, I grew up in the same neighborhood as the Harts. The house on CFCN Hill, a legendary house, she said, was like the Royal Palace. That was where Stu Hart, have you ever heard about the dungeon? They called it the dungeon.
Yeah.
It's like
Just cranked out wrestlers.
just pumped out wrestlers. Imagine if
what he
those
did.
walls could speak, if those walls could talk. Unbelievable. So we've got a big week coming up, and before we get to what's coming up on the show, and I believe we've already made our big announcement. We're excited to talk to Biff Naked, which I think is going to be a
Huge.
great conversation in studio on Wednesday.
You still have little surprises to tell people. I don't know if you want to tell it yet, but okay.
Well,
I'll
what's
keep
the
going.
surprise you want to tell?
Just when she's here, what she potentially will be.
Well,
Okay.
we don't want
All
to
right,
deal
all right,
in
all right,
potentials.
all right.
Why do we put it this way? You, a renowned audio expert.
We're trying to push her to.
What we're going to do is we are going to run a couple of extra microphones on set, and if she happens to bring
We're
an
going to
acoustic
leave a guitar in the corner. We're going to put an amp there.
we'll see if she wants to.
We're going to put some picks in her mic here
think
at
it'll be
the
a
third
good one.
camera. And if she happens to pick up the guitar and start singing,
Then we're not going to stop her. It's going to be a good one.
go ahead.
Okay. I've had mixed feelings about doing this because we're just well, let me just say this. As we wrap the first episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Solar by Kuby, we present what's called Positive Reflections. And this is going to be different because something has happened, which is not my news to share, and it's not up to me to talk about. But the community of Edmonton, the province of Alberta, and I'm going to say the nation of Canada has suffered an incredible and devastating loss with a mountain bike crash over the weekend. And while family members are still being notified and the RCMP are confirming details, the family of the person who succumbed to their injuries in this mountain bike crash has asked that no public information be shared. But I have been made aware that a wonderful, dear and cherished friend of the show has passed away in this crash, and this is not positive at all. But I did want to share a reflection today, which is that, my friends, life is fleeting, and relationships are so incredibly important, and our life's work and the impact of our lives can be gauged, can it not, on the connections that we make with people, how we approach our professions, how we define community, how we treat and what we do for people in need, less vulnerable communities. We will be sharing details with you in shows to come and more fulsome and meaningful reflections on this person's legacy, including their contributions to this show, Real Talk, one of the very first guests ever. And so in the meantime, while we cannot share details, and I know that this may be strange for some of you, Real Talk, I didn't want to pretend like this person was not on my heart all day. I did not want to pretend like this has been a very difficult 24 hours. And I did want this to serve as a reminder, almost a plea, to take 5 minutes today to check in with the people that you love, to let them know that you appreciate them, maybe to make amends in a circumstance where that's exactly what needs to happen. For we never know when our time will come. We never know when our time on earth will be over. And so in that spirit, and in honor of those we have lost, those who we would give anything to have one more text message from, one more DM, one more conversation publicly or privately, one more hug. Make today a day where you show appreciation to somebody in your life. I bet as I'm saying this, perhaps you're thinking of someone in particular. You've been meaning to call them. You've been meaning to send them a text. You know, oftentimes we find out that we'll never have that opportunity again. I had that experience this weekend along with many, many other people. And so I encourage you today, as a positive reflection in light of serious tragedy, to reach out to somebody you care about, somebody with whom it's been too long since you've connected, and let them know how you really feel. That's today's positive reflection with a heavy heart, presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. We're back at it tomorrow. Philippe Fournier joins us from Quebec with his look at polling in that province and polling across the country from 338 Canada. And Ian Runkle, a lawyer who took big issue with my interview with Prime Minister Mark Carney, in particular, the Prime Minister's comments on so-called gun confiscations, is going to join us and give us his perspective as we continue to seek the truth. Thanks for being a part of this episode. Thanks for supporting Real Talk. We'll see you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.